I'm going to show you where everyone goes wrong when rehabbing their hamstring tendon, including the one unlikely exercise everyone needs to do and why you shouldn't be doing glute bridges. Why should you trust me? Well, early in my physio career, I realized there was a condition that a lot of people, especially runners, were suffering from that was often misdiagnosed as sciatica or piriformis syndrome, that therapists didn't really know how to treat it, and on top of that, it was very difficult to heal on its own. So to combat this problem, I created the Overcoming Proximal Hamstring Tendinopathy podcast, which has over 100 episodes to help people understand this condition. And as a result, I've consulted with thousands of people with PHT, and I've seen all the rehab mistakes people make and can tell you exactly what creates long-term success. But it's really important we cover a few things first. PHT is pain mostly localized around the sit bone area, which mostly gets worse with prolonged sitting, especially on hard surfaces, bending, and running, especially speed workouts. If any one or a combination of these activities are increased too abruptly, the tendon doesn't have time to adapt and instead becomes overloaded. This leads to an irritation of the proximal hamstring tendon, hence the term proximal hamstring tendinopathy. A diagnosis with medical scans like an MRI isn't very reliable since the tendon pathology is commonly seen even in the healthy population. So typically a therapist will make a diagnosis by getting a detailed history of the injury, analyzing the behavior of symptoms, and using a combination of tests such as palpation, stretches, and loading exercises. Some you can try at home include the heel press test, pushing the heel directly down in a 90-90 position, and the shoe off test, digging the heel of the painful side into the other foot. If your symptoms are reproduced and localized to the high hamstring area, it may increase the likelihood of you having PHT. And once you have identified that the proximal hamstring tendon is irritated, the overarching treatment is to modify and reduce the load placed on the hamstring throughout the day in an attempt to settle down symptoms. This could be modifying your sitting or backing off your speed sessions. However, while this is going on, you want to restore the tendon's capacity so you can successfully return back to the activities you enjoy. This is usually done with the right strengthening exercises with the correct sets, reps, weight, and range of movement. I'll show you the right exercises in a second, including an exercise I give almost everyone with PHT. But it is usually at this point in people's rehab journey where my frustration kicks in. Because at this point, if you see a health professional, odds are they're going to give you glute bridges as a form of rehab. They assign this exercise because of this paper, which instructs patients to work through 4 stages of PHT rehab, with stage 1 including single leg bridge holds and long lever bridges. The other 2 are often ignored because they're hard to replicate at home. But this is where people get stuck. Either they see an initial improvement in symptoms and try doing bridges more often but see diminishing results, or the bridges cause some discomfort initially, and so people are really hesitant to progress to phase 2. But here is the number 1 key message you need to get out of this video. Tendons love and will adapt to slow, heavy, progressive load. Slow means a long time under tension, usually about 6 seconds per repetition of a given exercise. I'll talk about how heavy things should be later, but this means progressing beyond bodyweight exercises and racking up the weight. Progressive load just means when the body is ready, you are deliberately and continuously challenging the tendon by adding more weight over the course of weeks and months. This will continue pushing tendon adaptation and overall recovery. It is this reason why complete rest doesn't make things better. And when it comes to bridges, the load placed on the proximal hamstring tendon isn't heavy or progressive enough to trigger adaptation. Sure, bridges can sometimes produce a nice analgesic effect, which is just a fancy term meaning it creates a short-term pain reduction, but it will not help in long-term recovery. Now, I am saying slow, heavy, progressive load is the way to go, but a word of warning. I am not saying go out and lift heavier than your tendon can tolerate. I say this because a lot of PHT sufferers listen to this message on the podcast and jump into the gym with heavier weights and they're flared up for weeks. To avoid this mistake, you need to find your own starting point. It does require some trial and error, but use these 3 pain rules to keep you on track. Number 1, symptoms during the exercise should be less than a 4 out of 10. And I know some of you may not have any symptoms during the exercise. That's great, but this is why the next rules are in place. Number 2, if symptoms are elevated afterwards, they return to their usual settled state within 12 hours. And 3, there is no noticeable irritation above your settled baseline symptoms the following day. So if you try the rehab exercises I'm about to explain, or if you decide to progress any of your current exercises and your symptoms exceed the limits of these 3 rules, you've overestimated what you can tolerate and you need to readjust. So listen closely. Based on your symptoms, your starting point might have to be lightweight. That's perfectly fine. But the key message here is that once you are able to progress, you opt for heavier weights rather than doing lighter exercises more often. Before we get into these exercises I prescribe for almost all of my PHT clients, it is my goal to spread as much useful information as I can. So I've created a free 5-day course on helping people better understand and treat PHT. All you need to do is sign up with the link in the description and you'll receive 1 email each day for 5 days. Day 1 is about PHT symptoms and learning if you may have other diagnoses going on. Day 2 shows you where the evidence lies on things like PRP injections, shockwave therapy, and surgery. Day 3 deals with the misconceptions of sitting and stretching, including how you can sit for longer without pain. And believe me, there are a lot of misconceptions on this topic. Day 4 is looking to see if certain lifestyle factors are hindering your ability to recover. And finally, Day 5 talks you through the right rehab exercises and how to tailor them to your unique needs. I'll touch on a fraction of Day 5's email right now by going through 2 crucial rehab exercises and finish with the most important exercise I give to almost everyone that has PHT. Exercise number 1 is the single leg prone hamstring curl, aiming for 3 sets of 8 on each side. If doing single leg is too difficult, then you can always start with a double leg curl. But try not to substitute this exercise with a resistance band, because it's often too hard to get it heavy enough to meet the conditions that tendons enjoy. The second exercise is called weighted step-ups. Find a box that is about half shin height and do 6 step-ups on one side before swapping and doing the other side, and completing 3 sets on each side in total. And finally, the exercise I assign to almost everyone with PHT is the deadlift. But a lot of people get this wrong and increase their risk of a flare-up, so pay close attention. Keep the dosage around 3 sets of 8 repetitions. You may even choose to start with 1/4 range of movement by keeping the bar or dumbbells just above the knees. And find a weight that falls within the 3 pain rules I mentioned earlier. No matter what range of movement you choose, keep to 3 seconds down, 2 seconds up. This is considered slow in the eyes of tendon rehab. It is, or will eventually be, heavy, and ticking off the last requirement, the exercise will need to be progressive. This means, once tolerated, gradually progress by either increasing the range of movement or upping the weights. However, don't progress to single leg deadlifts. You won't have the stability or control to meet the conditions that suit tendon healing. That brings me to a question a lot of you ask: how heavy is heavy? For most of the athletic population, you should set yourself a benchmark of deadlifting 3 sets of 8 reps with a weight matching close to or above your body weight. Even in the sedentary population, if you want to rehab this tendon effectively, the weight should be 70 to 80% of your body weight. Reaching that benchmark might take you 6 to 12 months. And even though that is a long time, you should be seeing steady improvements with less pain week by week throughout that time period. But we haven't yet touched on how many times a week you should be doing these exercises. Unfortunately, it depends on a lot of factors, which I discuss in detail in that free course. But I'd say for most, 2 to 3 times per week will suit. And if you are a runner and want guidance on your running throughout this rehab process, then check out this playlist where I've taken out all the guesswork and created a step-by-step guide.